This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.
There is still so much more to talk about here with Eric Bland. He is the attorney for the Satterfield family and has also been the attorney for many other families involved in the trials of Alec Murdaugh, especially the civil cases, getting settlements for 5 different families who brought cases against Murdaugh for stealing settlement money that was received while Murdaugh represented them. The list of the wrongs of Alec Murdaugh goes very, very deep. My question for you, Eric, at this point is, okay, we know he's guilty of so many different things. He's been spending a lot of money on legal defense and just in his living life prior to being arrested. Does this man, is there much left for going after, quite honestly? People deserve their money, but is there money to be gotten from Alec at this point?
So he doesn't inherit from Maggie's estate.
Yep.
That goes to Paul. That goes to Buster. The Slayer statute says he can't profit from books or movie deals on Maggie and Paul's death, right?
Okay. Yep.
He had $1.9 million in an IRA that the court let him liquidate. There was a 50% penalty on that.
Uh-huh.
Harpootlian got $600,000 of that, and then the receiver took $200,000 of that, and $100,000 has been put in a pool for victims of Alex's theft. Now, so far, we've recovered over $7.5 million in cash for the Satterfield boys. Plus, I still have the $4 million judgment against Alex. So you say, okay, Harpootlian got $600,000. He also got $500,000 for representing Buster on the DUI homicide and never had to earn that because obviously, not Buster, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul was shot and killed.
Yeah.
So he never had to really earn the $500,000. So he had $500 from that, he and Griffin.
Yeah.
And then they got $600. But the $600 went quick in this murder case because the experts, they spent over $200,000 in experts. They stayed at a $20,000 a week compound during the trial for 7 weeks. So when you start adding up all the money, they ended up with like a couple $100,000 to prepare for a murder case for 5 months and then stay there for 7 weeks. It's kind of like Shakespeare, the fornicating I'm getting in worth the fornicating I'm getting.
Yes.
Plus now they've entered their appearance in all these financial crime cases. And Tony, it's much harder to get out as an attorney when you're of record in a criminal case than in a civil case. So they may be in it. Now, I suspect what you're going to see, Harpootlian filed the notice of appeal. I suspect over the coming weeks, one or both of Jim or Dick may bail on Alex. They may decide to make motions to the court. And truthfully, if they're really smart attorneys, they would want a fresh set of eyes to look at what they did. If you're listening to Jim Griffin's post-trial comments, I mean, he's really going after SLED. He's going after Judge Newman. He's criticizing the jury. He accused SLED of having the blue shirt, the seafoam shirt, and secreting it, which would be a crime.
Yeah.
On their behalf and on the prosecutor's behalf, under the Brady Act, you got to turn over all exculpatory material. He's really, I think he's mortally hurt because he honestly believes in his heart that Alex was innocent. Now, it may be clouded with the relationship that's too close that he has with that family. But as far as the money, Randolph Murdaugh died on June 10th of 2021, 3 days after Maggie and Paul.
Uh-huh.
He left $16 million, Tony, $4 million in trust to each of his children, Alex, John Marvin, Lynn, and Randy.
Okay.
And that's untouchable money. So Alex still has $4 million of trust money. And you ask yourself, wait a minute, that guy was a solicitor for his whole life. How the hell do you amass $16 million? That's a good question,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that is a good question. And is that something that can even be gone after, though, at this point? Obviously, he's deceased.
Yeah. Under the asset protection laws, when it's in trust, I think he's going to leave it. It'll go stay for Buster. And they settled. Mark Tinsley 3 weeks ago settled his claim in the Beach case against Maggie's estate, and I think they got $1 million, and the receiver got some money, and they left $500,000 for Buster. So right now, Buster has $500,000 to live out his life and figure out what he's going to do. But hold up in an apartment in Hilton Head is really not a solution for a 26-year-old kid who, he walks around with flaming red hair. Everybody's going to know who he is. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
The kid's branded, and by nothing he did. Now, look, if he had something to do with Stephen Smith's murder, then I changed my opinion.
Yeah.
But I feel bad for the kid. What he's gone through is horrific.
Is there that in the Stephen Smith case? What I wonder about is, it was just so kind of open and shut, hit and run, and then they're done. They don't really wasn't much of an investigation into any of this, and it's been years. Even if he was involved, as some of the allegations go, would there be enough evidence to even convict or to go after anyone at this point, or has that window and door just completely closed? Because of lack of evidence, because of lack of everything that was not done at the time investigatively to potentially bring justice to Stephen for whatever exactly happened to him.
Well, the only way two people can keep a secret if they both kill somebody is if one of them kills the other.
Yeah.
So if there were multiple people that had a hand in Stephen Smith's death, somebody's going to talk if they're pressured. And SLED has a way, and so does the FBI. They have confidential informants all over the state. And, I know that Griffin posited that a cartel, may have hit may have hit Maggie and Paul.
Yeah.
That was a cartel hit. No. One, because they would have killed Alex. They wouldn't have let him live.
Uh-huh.
Two, cartel doesn't come kill somebody without any guns and steal yours to kill you with your guns.
Yeah.
They come with their own, and they do it quietly and quickly. So I don't believe that there was a cartel involved. And the reason I don't believe it is because I know the FBI for the last 2 years has gone to their confidential informants, to all the different players, to try to find out something. And somebody would have squealed. Remember, I don't know if you ever read Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, but people give themselves away. Even if they can get away with a crime, they end up leaving a breadcrumb here or there.
Yeah.
They can't help it. You look at Kohberger out in Idaho. Here's a guy that's a PhD criminology major guy, right? Yep. And he couldn't pull it off. You screw up, you bring a phone with you, or you drive past the camera that's on a pole. It's impossible to keep something like that secret. Two people would have had to have done it if there were two killers, and they would have told somebody, and somebody up their food chain in a cartel would have known.
Sure. And
the FBI would have traded something to get that information. There would have been a tremendous trading of consideration.
Yeah.
FBI would have let somebody go in return for information. It doesn't exist. Murder is never perfect. The reason that motive isn't an element of murder, Tony, is because sometimes a killer chooses to kill people for a reason that he thinks is a right reason or makes sense. But to normal people like you and me, we would be like, what? We scratch our head and say, what?
Yeah.
That's why you did it. Your wife was looking at somebody at a barbecue and you came home and you decided to whack her? Really?
No.
That's the reason? So, look, murder is problem solving. Alex had a number of problems going on at the time of June 7th. He had the Satterfields knowing that they now were asking questions about where was the money. That's why he texted Tony, my client, 7 weeks before the murder and said, "Hey, Bo, want to get up with you and give you an update on your case. You know, I'm getting close to getting you money." I mean, that was in 2021. He stole all the money in 2019, and the case was dismissed in 2020. So there was nothing going on. So he knows that the Satterfields are closing in. He knew that Jeannie Seckinger confronted him on the morning of the murders. She's the CFO of the law firm, about $792,000 of missing fees. His own wife refused to sign her interest over of the Edisto Beach House to Palmetto State Bank for a loan that Alex got in the spring of 2021. He had such a great relationship with this bank, Tony, that he could get the loan and they'd give him the money. And then 4 or 5 weeks later, they would paper the loan. Now, I don't have a relationship with the bank that gives me my money, and then the paperwork's done somewhere down the road. Before I get my money, I got to fill out all the paperwork.
Yeah.
But they let him do it, and they didn't realize that he didn't own the beach house, that it was in Maggie's name. And Maggie said, "Hell no. No, I'm not assigning over the interest." And then the final pressure, as you heard in the trial, was Mark Tinsley, who is a human terrorist, Tony. I'm just telling you, I know him. He's one of our best and brightest trial lawyers. You let him in your house, he will blow your shit up. He's just that good.
Yeah.
And he was chasing Alex to the gates of hell.
Yeah.
And within 3 days of June 7th was going to have a pretty big hearing on Alex's finances. So is that enough of a reason to kill your wife and kid? All of that? No, for me, it wouldn't be. And for you, it wouldn't be. But they used the word to describe Alex as paranoid. Remember?
Yep.
They said that the reason he lied to SLED beginning on June 7th was he was paranoid from the drug use. Well, I think the jury used that paranoia against him and said, well, maybe he was so paranoid that it caused him to commit murder. You know, if this case was purely a blood case, a GSR case, or a DNA case, he wouldn't have been convicted. If they didn't have that video placing him at the kennel at 8:44, they wouldn't have brought charges. It migrated to a scientific case, which was really interesting when you saw it, like this OnStar. You know, you felt like you were riding in the car when they were saying, okay, now we're at the end of the driveway. Now we're speeding up at 40 miles an hour. Here's where we stop, and the phone got thrown at 40. Now we're going 80. Mm-hmm. You felt like you were in the car. Then we learned a ton about phone orientation and phone mapping and how the phone starts up, even though it may not light up. It's starting to record data and information. Yeah. We learned about the Snapchat videos and everything. But when Alex took the stand, Tony, the trial changed. It became a referendum on Alex. It's whether the jury believed him. And you heard the jury say he wasn't going to pull one last con job on us.
Yeah. And
so when I was debating Dershowitz said under normal circumstances, murder cases are reversed 5% of the time. Mm-hmm. So 5 out of 100 cases will get reversed. He said, but when the defendant testifies, it's less than 0.5%.
Wow.
So I don't, and the reason is because the appellate courts may say, well, sure, there was a evidentiary admission mistake on behalf of the judge. However, once the defendant testified and waived his Fifth Amendment right, the jury could have found him guilty because they didn't think he was credible. And so I don't think his murder his murder convictions are going to be reversed. I think it was an incredible bad decision to put him on the stand, giving his history of lies and the fact that he called everybody else in court a liar. Uh-huh. You know, Michelle Smith, that she lied about the blue tarp and lied about that he came to her and said, remember, I'm at the house 30 to 40 minutes. Blanca, she lied. I never said to her it was a Vineyard Vine shirt, not a Columbia shirt. Mark Tinsley lied. I never had a confrontation with him at the trial lawyers convention. Marion, the sister-in-law, lied. I never told her to convince Maggie to come back to Mizell on the night of the murders. The police chief, the African-American police chief, lied. He told me that I could put blue lights on my car. SLED lied, media lied. And by the way, I'm a drug addict and I'm a liar and I'm a thief.
Yeah.
But today, when the devil's at the door, you better believe me. And the jury didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean,
They rejected it.
It was incredible watching that testimony of, I lie about everything, but on this one, you got to believe me. You got to believe
me. And they didn't just find him guilty. They found him incredibly guilty. Okay.
Sure.
As the producers jury said in the Broadway show, they found him incredibly guilty. To come back that quickly, that's incredibly guilty.
With all these other charges that are pending against him, is there a point where the court system says, we're not going to waste our time or our money prosecuting you because you have nothing to give us other than your guilt? Or will all of these things continue to be charged against him and prosecuted against him? And I'm curious, is he at some point going to start pleading guilty? Because I don't know how you plead not guilty to any of this at this point.
Well, he did. He pled not guilty in all the financial crime cases, including Gloria's case. But last week or 2 weeks ago, he said, I did it. I've stolen all the money. I'm guilty of these crimes. But unlike in a civil case where I can file what's known as a motion for summary judgment, and the court will look at the evidence and determine that there's no material facts in dispute and give me judgment in my favor. In a criminal case, there's not a mechanism like that.
Oh.
So they actually have to impanel the jury, and they'll be able to use his testimony against him, but they're going to go through the motions. So the question is he going to plead guilty? And the answer is no, because he thinks he's going to get this murder conviction reversed, which then he doesn't want to go plead guilty to these financial crimes because that gives him life without parole. So he's going to force the government to go through all the machinations. Plus, you're smart enough to know that probably the South Carolina appellate courts are not itching to just grab his new appeal and put it to the front of the line.
Yeah.
They gave him a trial quickly on the murder charges. He jumped the line to a lot of other defendants who've been sitting in jail for 5 years with murder charges that haven't had their cases tried. No. So I think they're going to stick his appeal in the back of the bus, and it'll come up when it comes up. But I think they're done doing favors for him. And the other thing is, Tony, he's sitting in protective confinement right now.
Yeah.
His life is at risk. He's a child killer.
Yeah.
He's going to go to prison very close to where his father prosecuted a lot of people who are probably in that prison.
Yeah.
Where the 14th Circuit, which he was an assistant solicitor, prosecuted and convicted people. He's not going to have an easy time. So they're going to have him in protective custody. He's going to want to get out. How do you get out? You go to trial. It's, he's sitting in an 8x8 cell 23 hours a day. They're probably giving him 1 hour of exercise at 3 a.m. in a cage outside. And the exercises he gets to walk around the cage. So I think he's going to use this as an opportunity just to get the hell out of jail and go to court for a couple of days.
Yeah. And then everyone pays for it, but he gets out to do that.
Well, he's going to end up with a public defender.
Sure. What on earth, how does one defend this at this point? Because he's literally, he's admitted to these charges in the criminal murder case. Isn't that enough to, here's why we think you're guilty. Here's the state's prosecution. Play. And you play admitting to everything.
Listen, they could say is rampant drug use, but that's not a defense to criminality. Yeah. The only thing they could start to say is he's insane. And do some kind of insanity plea. Yeah. And the standard is it, the old standard was the McNaughton rule. Now they have a substantial certainty test to try to show that he's insane. It's indefensible. One, you got his words that said he's stolen, but the Satterfield case, a first-year lawyer could try it. There's 3 checks that went to the fake Forge account that he took.
Yeah.
He's established this fake Forge account at Bank of America, instead of the real Forge Consulting. So, I mean, he's guilty of sin.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes facts are stubborn things, Tony. Lawyers can only do so much. And these facts are very stubborn.
Yeah, it's baffling to see how he's going to defend anything at this point. But more shoes will continue to drop, I'm sure. Do you have a feeling that there's even more that will come out from historically in the past prior to all of the things we know about?
I think our Office of Disciplinary Counsel has been spending about the past year probably 60% of their work on the Murdaugh cases. And I think there's some lawyers that could face some problems that Alex may have done business with. I think there's banks that are going to have to answer some hard questions, whether Palmetto State Bank will survive this. Will Alex ever talk?
Yeah.
He holds the key. Obviously, look at what Randy Murdaugh said after the verdict in the New York Times. I don't know if you read that article, but
he knows more than he's saying.
I think it's a little too little too late. But what he said is he's distancing himself from the rest of the family.
Yeah.
And he said, Alex is clearly hiding something. He has not come clean and knows more than what he said. So is that Randy trying to preserve his name and stay with his law firm and disassociate from the Murdaughs, who the next day their lawyers said, we think he's more innocent today than we did yesterday. Even after the verdict, they said that. And Harpootlian and Griffin are doubling down on that and proclaiming his innocence. Bob Dylan said sometimes when you're in a hole, if you keep digging, all you do is dig yourself further. You don't actually dig yourself out.
Yeah.
And I think Harpootlian, with what he's trying to do by justifying, and he's right, people are entitled to a vigorous defense. That's what makes our system beautiful.
Yep.
We're not Iran. We don't charge somebody on Tuesday, try them on Wednesday, and kill them on Thursday.
Uh-huh.
And a job of a defense attorney is to really make the government work to prove their allegations and their claims. And that's why our system is gorgeous and the envy of the world. But Griffin is starting to say things in these interviews on Court TV where he's suggesting that SLED has the blue shirt. I mean, that is dangerous because you're suggesting that law enforcement is secreting evidence and a prosecutor is violating his Brady obligations. And, Jim's a young man. He's in his 50s.
Yeah.
You got to practice. Harpootlian is 74 years old. I get it that he's just trying to save his legacy. But, if you represent Charles Manson, you're going to get some of the stink on you. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe some clients don't want their lawyer to have been the Murdaugh lawyer.
Yeah. Maybe
they don't want that. Maybe they don't want to walk into court and have a judge look at you and say, you picked the lawyer that represented one of the most notorious murderers in our state's history. So the coming months will be interesting. Randy, clearly believes that Alex knows more, but he should have spoke up sooner than after the trial.
Yeah.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
Thanks for joining us, Eric Bland, for all your insight onto this case and your experiences in what is probably a very satisfying and somewhat scarring experience at the same time. Being surrounded with so much crazy, it just makes your head spin. Always appreciate your insight, Eric. If you like the podcast, be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any insight or discussions on the cases that we're following for you, including breaking updates. We do greatly appreciate that. You can get an ad-free experience through Apple Podcasts if you subscribe there. So do check that out. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.